The house smelled like my father. That's the first thing I noticed when I pulled into the driveway that Friday evening, that particular mix of cedar wood and old motor oil and the faint trace of the pipe tobacco he'd quit 20 years ago but somehow never fully left the walls. I sat in my car for a moment with the engine off, just breathing it in through the cracked window. The maple tree in the front yard had dropped most of its leaves by then, and they were scattered across the walkway in shades of rust and amber, the kind of October colors that used to make my dad grab his camera. He'd been gone 14 months. I still hadn't fully accepted that the house was mine. My husband was already inside. I could see the kitchen light on through the window, and his car was in the garage, which meant he'd gotten home before me for once. I grabbed my tote bag from the passenger seat and went in through the side door, the one that sticks a little in cold weather and makes that grinding sound against the frame that my dad always said he'd fix, but never did. "Hey," I called out. "Hey." His voice came from the living room, not the kitchen, flat, distracted. I set my bag down and walked through. He was on the couch with his laptop open, typing something. He didn't look up. "Long day?" I asked. I stood there for a second. We'd been married 3 years. I knew the difference between tired and elsewhere, and he was elsewhere. But I was tired too, so I let it go. Went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and started thinking about what to make for dinner. That was a Thursday in October. I want to remember that clearly, because everything that came after traces back to that evening, to that flat, to me standing in my father's kitchen feeling like a guest in my own home. My father bought this house in 1987 for $62,000. He refinished the hardwood floors himself, put in the new kitchen cabinets himself, built the deck out back himself over the course of 3 summers. He raised me and my younger sister here after our mother left when I was 9. He drove us to school and made Sunday pancakes and coached my sister's soccer team even though he'd never played a day in his life. He was not a perfect man, but he was a devoted one. When he was diagnosed with stage 3 kidney disease 5 years ago, he updated his will. He left the house to me, not to my sister, not split between us, not held in trust, to me, because I was the one who'd moved back to help. Because I was the one who drove him to dialysis 3 times a week. Because he told me, sitting in his recliner with the oxygen concentrator humming beside him, "This is your home too, sweetheart. You earned it." My sister got the investment accounts. That was fair. We both agreed it was fair. She lives in Portland now. Happy. No hard feelings. The house appraised at $430,000 last spring when my husband, I'll call him what he was, a man I no longer recognize, suggested we look into our options. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought he meant refinancing. Maybe a home equity line for the bathroom renovation we'd been putting off. I did not think he meant selling it. I did not think he meant selling it without telling me first. My husband's name is Callum, not a name from some list, just his name, the one his Scottish mother gave him, the one I said in front of 40 people at a small ceremony in my aunt's backyard 3 years ago. Callum worked in commercial real estate financing, which I mention not because it's relevant to what he did, but because it makes what he did worse. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the process. He knew the documents. He knew the timelines. He did not stumble into this. He planned it. I found out the way you find out about things that were never meant for you, by accident. On an idle Tuesday, when I came home early because my afternoon meetings were cancelled and he wasn't expecting me. He was at the kitchen table with 2 men I didn't know. Laptops open, papers spread out, empty coffee mugs. The kind of comfortable, settled arrangement that meant they'd been there a while. I walked in and the conversation stopped. The way conversations stopped, the way conversations stop when someone enters a room who wasn't supposed to. "Oh," Callum said, "you're home. My meetings got cancelled." I looked at the men, then at the papers, then back at him. "What's going on?" He stood up, came toward me, hand out like he was gently redirecting foot traffic. "We're just finishing up something. It won't take long." "What are you finishing up?" It's a work thing. Go relax, I'll explain later." One of the men at the table shifted in his seat. The other was looking very carefully at his laptop screen. Is this about the house? I asked. Something crossed Callum's face, just for a second. Then it was gone. We can talk about it later, he said. His voice had dropped. Quieter, firmer. The voice he used when he thought he was being patient with me. I'd like to talk about it now. He looked at me then with an expression I had never seen on him before, or maybe one I had seen and never let myself name. Slightly annoyed. Slightly above it. Like I was a child who'd wandered into a meeting. This is a business conversation, he said. It doesn't concern you right now. Why don't you go upstairs? I remember the exact feeling of those words landing. Not anger first, that came later. First, it was something almost like vertigo, like the floor had shifted slightly under me. Why don't you go upstairs? In my father's house. In the house where I learned to read on that couch in the living room. In the house where I cried every night for a month after my father died. Why don't you go upstairs? Whose name is on the deed? I asked. Silence. Whose name is on the deed? I asked. Silence. Whose name is on the deed, Callum? He didn't answer. One of the men at the table closed his laptop. I turned around and walked back out the side door. I sat in my car in the driveway for 6 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on my dashboard without really seeing it, and when I finally focused it said 2:47, and the last time I checked it said 2:41. I was not falling apart. I want to be clear about that. Some part of me had clicked into something cold and very still, the same part that functioned on the day of my dad's funeral, when I had to speak in front of everyone, and I did it without crying because I had decided I would. I took out my phone. The first call I made was to the county recorder's office, just to confirm what I already knew. My name was the only name on that deed. My father had transferred it to me 18 months before he died, through a proper quitclaim deed, witnessed and recorded. Callum's name was not on it. It had never been on it. The second call I made was to a real estate attorney whose name I'd gotten from a colleague 2 years ago for a completely different reason and had kept in my phone for no particular reason. I'd never used it. Her name was on my screen and I called her. She answered on the third ring. I told her what I'd just walked in on. I told her about the 2 men with the laptops and the papers spread on my kitchen table. I told her my husband worked in commercial real estate and would know exactly how to structure something like this. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Don't go back inside yet, and don't let him know you've called me." I said, "Okay." She said, "I need you to listen carefully." What she explained to me in the next 11 minutes, sitting in my own driveway, was the following. If my husband had somehow obtained or forged a power of attorney, or if he was attempting to structure a sale using a document that misrepresented my consent, that was fraud. That was a criminal matter, not just a civil one. She told me that if I had any way to document what I'd seen, the papers, the men, the conversation, I needed to do it carefully, and now. I went back inside through the front door this time. Slowly, I could hear them talking in the kitchen, voices lower than before. I went to the hallway bathroom instead of upstairs. I stood at the sink and ran the water and looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. Then I went back out and into the kitchen. "I'm sorry," I said. I made my voice sound the way I needed it to sound, soft, backing down. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll let you guys finish." Callum visibly relaxed. "Thank you," he said, in that same patient voice. "I'll explain everything tonight." I smiled. I went upstairs. From the hallway window that overlooks the driveway, I took 4 photos on my phone, the 2 men's cars' license plates clearly visible. I noted the time. Then I went to the small home office where we kept our filing cabinet, and I pulled out the folder where Callum and I kept household documents together. The deed wasn't there. I kept that separately, in a fireproof lockbox in my closet, along with my father's will and the probate documents. But in that shared folder I found something I had never seen before. It was a document with my name on it. A limited power of attorney dated 6 weeks earlier, granting Callum authority to act on my behalf in real estate transactions. Notarized. With what was supposed to be my signature. I photographed every page. I put the folder back exactly as I found it. Then I went to my closet, took out the lockbox, confirmed the deed was untouched, relocked it, and pushed it to the back of the top shelf behind a stack of sweaters. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and texted my attorney 3 words. I found something. She called me back within 2 minutes. I described the document. She asked me several questions. She asked whether the notary seal looked familiar, whether the signature looked like mine or like someone's idea of mine, whether the date on the document corresponded to any time I'd been asked to sign anything by Callum or anyone connected to him. I thought about it. 6 weeks ago, we'd been to a closing dinner for one of his deals. I'd signed a restaurant receipt, a birthday card for a colleague, a form that he said was an updated beneficiary designation for his life insurance. He'd slid it across the table at the restaurant with a pen already in his hand and said, "Quick thing, just your John Hancock." I had signed it without reading it. I stayed very still on the edge of the bed. "Are you there?" she asked. "I'm here. Are you okay? I need a minute." She gave me the minute. Then she told me what to do next. The men left around 5 o'clock. I heard the front door, then the cars pulling out of the driveway. I heard Callum moving around downstairs. Kitchen sounds, the clink of a glass, the television turning on. I came downstairs at 5:30. He was on the couch, same spot as always, beer in hand, game on TV. He looked up when I came in and smiled. The regular Callum smile, easy and familiar. And for one disorienting second, I almost forgot what was sitting in a photographed folder on a kitchen table 40 minutes ago. "Hey," he said. "Come sit. I'll explain everything." I sat in the chair across from him, not next to him on the couch. He talked for 20 minutes. He told me about a business opportunity with a former colleague. I'll call him the colleague because it doesn't matter, who needed capital to close on a commercial property deal that would generate, in Callum's words, life-changing returns. He talked about leveraging the house, using the equity, how we were sitting on a gold mine and doing nothing with it, how other people with a quarter of our assets were building real wealth while we let it just sit there. He was animated in a way I hadn't seen in months. He leaned forward, his eyes were bright. At no point did he acknowledge that he had forged my signature on a legal document. At no point did he say the words, "I'm sorry," or "I should have asked you." He said, at the end, "I knew you'd worry, so I wanted to have the whole picture before I brought you in." That's all this was. I looked at him for a long moment. "What about the power of attorney?" I said. His face went very still. "The one dated 6 weeks ago," I said. "The one with my signature on it." He set down his beer slowly. "That was just. It was a formality. The attorney said we might need it just in case the timeline got complicated. It doesn't mean it's a forgery," I said. "It's not, Callum." I kept my voice completely level. "I know what I signed at that restaurant. I know a document you handed me." The bright-eyed animation was completely gone. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully decode. Part calculation, part something softer that might have been the beginning of understanding how badly he had miscalculated. "You need to think very carefully," I said, "about what you say next." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "I was going to tell you everything once the deal was done. That's not good enough. The returns on this would have paid off the... That's not what this is about." "Then what's it about?" "It's about the fact that you forged my signature on a legal document to sell a house that belongs to me without asking me, without telling me, and when I walked into my own kitchen this afternoon, you told me to go upstairs." His jaw tightened. "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" He didn't answer. I stood up. "I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight," I said. "You don't have to." "I'm not leaving because I'm upset and I need space," I said. "I'm leaving because I have things to take care of and I can't do them with you here." I did not go to my sister's. I went to a hotel 4 miles away, a Marriott off the interstate, and I sat on the edge of the king bed with my laptop and my phone, and I spent the next 3 hours on the phone with my attorney, then with a detective at the county sheriff's office who specialized in real estate fraud, then with my sister in Portland, who was not calm, not at all, but who I needed to tell. And then finally, with a locksmith I found on Google who did emergency calls. The locksmith met me at my father's house at 11 o'clock that night. Callum's car was gone. I don't know where he went. I changed both the exterior door locks and the garage code, and I stood in the kitchen of my father's house, alone, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 14 months, like I was home. The next morning, I was back at the house before 8. I had coffee going and the deed on the kitchen table when my attorney arrived at 8:30. We went through everything together. The photographed documents, the notary seal, the timeline of the restaurant dinner, the text messages I'd found the night before when I went through our shared iCloud account, messages between Callum and his colleague that laid out the plan with a clarity that was almost impressive in its audacity. They had been planning it for 4 months. The POA was only one piece of it. They had also drafted a purchase agreement with a buyer, a shell company connected to the colleague, at a price that was roughly $60,000 below market value. The difference would have gone somewhere I didn't want to think about too hard. At 10:15, 2 officers from the county arrived. They were professional and quiet, and they looked at everything I had. One of them took notes. The other photographed the documents separately. Callum showed up at 11:08. He pulled into the driveway and got out of his car and walked toward the front door with his key already in his hand, and then he saw the officer's vehicle, and he stopped. I was standing just inside the front window. I watched him stop. He stood in the driveway for a long moment. Then he took out his phone. I assumed to call someone. Then he seemed to think better of it. Then he looked at the front door. Then he looked directly at the window where I was standing. I didn't move. He walked to the front door and knocked. One of the officers opened it. I heard the conversation from the living room. I heard Callum's voice shift through its registers. Confusion, then explanation, then a thin attempt at calm authority, then something that broke at the edges when one of the officers mentioned the specific statute. And then, from the front doorway, I heard him say my name. Not my full name, just the name he used when he wanted something. Soft, pleading. The way he used to say it when we were first together and everything was easy. Please, he said. Can I just talk to her? Just for a minute. We're family. I walked to the doorway. He looked terrible. He hadn't slept. He was wearing the same shirt from the night before. You need to hear me out, he said. Everything I did for us. You know that. Whatever this looks like right now, I was trying to build something for us. I looked at him standing in the doorway of my father's house, in front of 2 county officers with a forged document bearing my name sitting on the kitchen table behind me. You told me to go upstairs, I said. He blinked. In my house, I said, with my name on the deed. You told me it was adult business and to go upstairs. He opened his mouth. You don't get to explain that away, I said. There's no version of that I'm interested in hearing. I stepped back. One of the officers stepped forward. The fraud case took 8 months to resolve. Callum's colleague, the one with the shell company and the below-market purchase agreement, was the primary target. He faced the more serious charges. Callum cooperated extensively, which I'm told affected the outcome of his case in ways I don't need to detail here, and genuinely don't think about much anymore. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that. 40 months total from that Tuesday afternoon to the morning I sat at my attorney's office and signed the last document and walked out into a grey February parking lot feeling lighter than I had in years. The house is still mine. The deed still has only one name on it. In the spring, I finally replaced the side door that always stuck. A small thing, a practical thing. But every time I come home now and it opens clean and smooth and quiet, I think about my dad saying he'd get around to it eventually. He didn't get around to it eventually, but I did. I refinished the back deck last summer with my sister's help. She came out from Portland for 2 weeks in July, and we worked on it in the evenings, and we ate takeout on it when it was done, and we talked about our dad the way you can finally talk about someone once the grief settles into something more like gratitude. The maple tree dropped its leaves again this October. I raked them myself. I'm still learning what it means to be in a home that is fully, legally, truly mine. To walk through it at night with a cup of tea and hear the floors creak in the particular places I've known since childhood and feel not haunted by that, but anchored. My father built something here. He knew what he was doing when he put my name on that deed. He knew exactly what kind of person I would need to be to protect it. I like to think he was right about me. I've had a lot of time to think about what actually happened, not just the fraud, not just the forged signature, but the whole architecture of it. How it was built slowly, over months, in plain sight. How I made it easy without knowing I was doing it. The thing about Callum is that he wasn't a monster from the beginning. That's the part that's hardest to explain to people who want a cleaner story. He was charming and confident and the kind of person who always had a plan, and for a long time I thought that was a quality I admired. It took me years to understand that always having a plan is only a virtue when the plan includes the people who are supposed to matter to you. What he did, the forged POA, the below-market sale to a shell company, the 4 months of quiet, careful arranging that didn't come from nowhere. It came from a belief, settled and unexamined, that he knew better. That his judgment about what to do with my father's house outweighed my right to make that decision myself. He didn't think he was stealing from me. I genuinely believe that. He thought he was managing me, and in his mind, managing me was the same thing as taking care of me. That distinction between being cared for and being managed is something I didn't fully understand until I was sitting in a hotel room off the interstate at 11 o'clock at night, changing the locks on my own house remotely, realizing I had spent 3 years inside a marriage where my husband's definition of partnership was one where he made the decisions, and I trusted his judgment about what I needed to know. What changed everything wasn't anger. Anger came later, and it was useful. But it wasn't what got me through those first hours. What got me through was clarity. The moment I walked back into that kitchen and said whose name is on the deed, that was me choosing to stand on solid ground. Everything I'd spent years half noticing, half explaining away, clicked into focus. And once things are in focus, you can act. I think about my father a lot when I think about that day. He was not a man who talked about values in the abstract. He showed them. He showed up. He fixed things with his hands and his time and his presence. And when he put my name on that deed, he wasn't just giving me property. He was saying, I trust you to protect this. I trust you to know what it's worth. I almost didn't live up to that, not because I was weak, but because I was patient with the wrong things for too long. There's a version of this story where I go upstairs like I was told, where I wait for the explanation that never comes, where the sale goes through and I find out afterward, too late to undo it. I've thought about that version. It scares me more than anything Callum actually did. What I know now, what I carry with me every time I come home and open that side door and hear it swing clean and quiet, is this: the moment you accept that someone else's confidence is a substitute for your own judgment, you start losing things. Quietly. Incrementally. Until one day you walk into your own kitchen and a man tells you to go upstairs and some part of you actually considers it. Your name on the deed means nothing if you don't act like it does. That's what my father understood. That's what my father understood. That's what I had to learn the hard way, and that's the thing I will not forget.